Welcome. A few words of introduction. So I'm Mike Hughes. I'm the business editor of the Northern Echo, and our business brand at the Echo is Business IQ. And the main thing that Business IQ does through the year is the Level Up campaign, which we work with some leading businesses throughout the region to draw investment and jobs here, which of course is what it's all about. So we have this series of live events through the year where we look at key themes, ask our panellists and our audience to contribute. And that's a good point to make, that please at any stage, if you've got any questions, if you want to interrupt someone, do that. I've got a few questions that have been submitted, so we'll get around to those a little bit later on. The whole event is video, of course, as we always do. For the first time today, we see a particular bank of cameras, we're live streaming the event. So any of your colleagues or anyone at home who couldn't get here today can follow it for the first time. So you're being saved for posterity. So yes, so do feel free to ask any questions. Our hosts today are Believe Housing, here in the rather lovely buildings in Seaham, one of the Northeast's largest housing associations. We're very grateful for them welcoming us here today. It's important, I think, when we look at the budget, to understand what its goals were, how it was pulled together, and what effect it's had on our region. So we'll talk about the effect on the region a little bit later on, but to take a huge leap towards understanding what the budget did for the region, it is, of course, a lot of its work is now done at the Darlington Economic Campus. So that sort of brings it really to the heart of us. We're first of all going to welcome our keynote speaker, Matthew Taylor, a central, vital voice for the Treasury as Director of the Darlington Economic Campus. Matthew. I'll sit on the front row.
Right, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you to Believe for hosting. Good to see you all. So, as Mike says, my name is Matthew Taylor. I'm the Director in Treasury in the Strategy, Planning and Budget Group. I'm also the Treasury's Head of Campus, a senior official in Darlington, leading the development of the campus. I wanted to give you a bit of an insight today into budgets. Funny thing, that's a big part of my world, a big part of the country's political and economic life, and the Treasury's role in them, what the Treasury is doing in Darlington, and the contribution that we made to bring the budget together, and finally give you some of the headlines of the budget itself, but with a particular focus on the impacts on the North East. Now, I know that lots of people here have been following the budget closely, watching it on the TV, following the media, and you'll know the key headlines. But hopefully, I can set a bit of context for what sounds like a really interesting panel discussion to come. Really keen to hear the views of the panel speakers who've been invited. So it was in the spring budget of 2021 that Rishi Sunak announced what was then the Treasury's Northern Campus and swiftly became the Darlington Economic Campus. So we're 3 years old, this budget. The intention is to create 1,200 new civil service jobs in Darlington, in addition to the 650, I think, Department for Education jobs that are already there. By the end of 24-25, that 1,200 will grow to 1,400 by the end of the decade. We're up to about 850 new jobs in Darlington today. Lots of recruitment going on, as we discussed earlier. That's quite an appreciable number for a town like Darlington. Not everybody comes from, lives in Darlington. Lots of people come from Newcastle, lots of people come from Durham. The Darlington is the Treasury's second headquarters. We have a raft of senior officials working on the full range of Treasury activity on public spending, tax, financial services, and staff working right across the political and economic agenda. Just a point we were discussing earlier, just to bust any myths, I think less than 20% of those people have transferred from London, and over 80% are being recruited locally, the vast majority of those are wholly new to the civil service. So these are jobs for local people right at the heart of government. Because the purpose of the exercise, after the wax lyrical about this, is to change the culture of the Treasury and bring a new diversity of thought and build quality of opportunity. So talent has been spread equally throughout the country since the dawn of time. Opportunities have disproportionately been based in London's South East for senior civil service policy jobs, at least, as lots of the other jobs. Darlington and Darlington Economic Campus challenges that. And we have a workforce in Darlington working on policy, giving advice to ministers who have lived experience of being in a region outside London, South East. Now, Darlington is different from the West Midlands, the Outer Hebrides and Cornwall, and they all have their own challenges. But there's something about the authenticity of experience in the economy of a town like Darlington and Newcastle, understanding the challenges around the delivery of public services and building that into the policy advice. That will make our policy advice to ministers stronger. We also want to go further and build really strong relationships with local and regional stakeholders, people like you, and feed your thoughts and your insights into policy making, which will help to improve the analysis and advice which civil servants provide to ministers. So, for a group of people working for Treasury in Darlington, there's no bigger event than a budget, like I saw last week. And most of my colleagues will have spent months preparing. I guess most of you know this, but a bit of context: what is the budget? People talk about fiscal events. People talk about budgets interchangeably. A fiscal event is simply when the government announces changes to the tax and spending policy via a Chancellor's statement to Parliament. There are three types of fiscal event, which you'll hear about: a budget, a financial statement, and a spending review. A budget, generally, not exclusively, generally accompanied by a forecast by the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, and is followed by a finance bill, an act of Parliament which just gives effect to the measures set out in the budget. There's at least one budget a fiscal year, starting in April, for the simple reason that income tax and corporation tax are technically temporary, so you have to reenact them, reapprove them every year in Parliament. Statements go out alongside the OBR's second forecast of the year and give an update. In the past, they tended to contain less detail and policy than budgets, but increasingly over the last couple of years, that hasn't really been the case, and they've been just as detailed. So the autumn statement in 2022 included just as much detail as the finance bill, and all the bells and whistles. And then a spending review is the process by which the Treasury and the government gives budgets to the individual spending departments, how much money we're to spend on education and health. And they tend to be multi-year things once every 4 to 5 years. So policy teams across the Treasury will spend months thinking through the Chancellor and Prime Minister's priorities for the next fiscal event, getting steers from them, and integrating this into their day-to-day policy advice, and slowly will draw together, iteratively through steers from the Prime Minister and Chancellor, the outlines of the package. This process includes a process of gathering views from stakeholders, businesses, business representative organisations and others will submit their views. Big organisations like the NHS will do the same, we'll gather them all together. The formal process begins around 12 weeks before the fiscal event. We tend to split it into 4 phases: policy making, final decisions, including telling the OBR what's in the budget so they can produce a forecast of what the impacts will be. Phase 3, the Chancellor's statement to Parliament, what happened last week, and then we're in phase 4 now, which is the parliamentary process that follows. My fellow director in my group was giving evidence to the Treasury Select Committee in Parliament yesterday with the Chancellor on the budget, and that will feed into the passage of the Finance Bill, which gives effect to all these measures. The final bit, that just like by way of context, people talked about quite a lot this year, in the media at least, was the concept of headroom. And like some people talked about the scorecard. What are those things? So the budget scorecard is just an internal decision-making tool in the Treasury. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and it has a list of every budget measure that's in the budget, with an assessment, which we get increasingly more precise on by consultation with the OBR, on what the fiscal cost or fiscal yield will be. Is it raising revenue, or is it spending money? It's used by the department and the Chancellor to keep track of the cost of the budget. The key thing is that we have to keep track of whether the budget will be within the mandate set within the fiscal rules. What are the fiscal rules? They are entirely self-imposed rules set by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor that act to constrain how much money we spend, how much money we borrow over a period of time. So just in very simple terms, when people talk about headroom, it's how much margin to spend money have we got whilst keeping within the fiscal rules. It's regularly assessed throughout the process, and the OBR will give a final assessment in their document that is issued alongside the budget itself. The Chancellor's speechwriters at some point will begin the process of writing the speech to Parliament. That will be based on the budget document that the Treasury produces. The speechwriters are special advisors, they'll include a political spin on it. They'll also speak to Treasury officials just to make sure that what he is saying matches what is in the budget itself. Budget day dawns, lots of work. Over a long period of time, Treasury officials have been doing lots of late nights. Lots of them will have spent the previous 12 weekends working pretty much constantly. There's a bit of an air of celebration by the time you get there. We all have a budget breakfast, people sit together, we replicate that in Darlington and London. And then after the speech happens, senior officials will get on the phone, call senior stakeholders, check how they feel about it, have a think about how it's landed, work out whether there's anything else we need to do to help support the media handling, and then in the evening everyone goes to the pub. Now there was some pictures on the media this year of like throngs, hundreds of Treasury officials outside the Two Chairmen pub in Westminster. We've managed to keep the House of Hop in Darlington out of the media so far, but I don't know how long that can last for. So the Chancellor's budget speech this year, close to an hour long, and I think I've got about 10 more minutes. I'm not going to cover it all today, but headlines give you a sense of the package, and hopefully that will set a useful context for the panel to come. The Chancellor recognised in his budget speech that the last few years have been tough for the obvious reasons that we've had the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had the energy shock, not least following Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, all the other challenges that we're all familiar with. Since the beginning of 23, the government's been working to achieve the Prime Minister's 5 priorities, 3 of which are economic, and 3 of which, those are the things that guide the policy making for the budget. So what are they? You all know them. Halving inflation. Inflation is less than half its recent peak, 11.1%, and it's expected to fall to its 2% target in Q2 of 2024, about a year earlier than the OBR expected at the autumn statement last year. Economy growing, second of the priorities, GDP grew by 0.1% in 2023. The employment rate has remained low by historical standards at 3.8% in Q4 2023. The IMF is forecasting that the UK will have the 3rd fastest cumulative growth in the G7 over the 2024 to 28 period. And you'll have all seen yesterday's GDP figures released by the ONS, which came after the budget, but they recorded a 0.2% growth in January following the slight contraction in the previous month. And then finally, debt falling The government's on track to meet both its borrowing and debt fiscal rule targets, with underlying debt falling as a share of GDP to 92.9%, still quite a number in 2028 to 29. Borrowing falling in every year by 28-29, and it's forecast to reach its lowest level as a share of GDP since 2001-2. So those are the kind of three main objectives that the Prime Minister set out relevant to the economy, which is guiding the Treasury work during this period. The Chancellor said that with the economy beginning to turn a corner, the government is now able to make further tax cuts responsibly to boost growth and ensure working people keep more of their own money, whilst meeting the fiscal rules to ensure sustainable public finances. So that, what's the objective of the budget? That is it. Make further tax cuts responsibly, boost growth, and ensure working people keep more of their own money. The government began with obviously the big headline measure by cutting national insurance to 29 million workers to autumn statement 23. Last week's spring budget went further, cutting the employee main rate of national insurance by 2p from 10% to 8%. Combined with the cut in the autumn statement, that means that the average worker on £35,000 a year will be over £900 a year better off than before. And then the government also committed to make a further 2p cut to the main rate of self-employed national insurance on top of the 1p cut announced in the autumn statement. So this will save the average self-employed person with profits of 28,000 a year, will save them an extra 650 quid. Then there was wider measures to support people in work. A lot of this is about supporting people in work and incentivising work. From April 2024, the government will raise the threshold for the high income child benefit charge. This is the kind of cut-off that requires people to pay back child benefit to £60,000 a year, taking 170,000 families out of paying what is essentially a tax. This charge will also be halved so that child benefit is not repaid in full until you earn £80,000 a year. So pushing it up against the very higher earners. And longer term, the government is committed to removing the unfairness of the system towards single earner families. The government will move to a system based on household rather than individual incomes by 2026. So part of the problem in the economy recently has been the labour market. This is all about incentivising people to get back to work in order to make sure that work pays and they're not suffering from challenges around childcare. Support consumers. The government maintain the rates of fuel duty at current levels for a further 12 months. Otherwise, this cancels the planned inflation increase and maintains the current 5p cut. So it's kind of an extension of the 5p cut rather than a new measure that would have impacted all of those motorists. And to boost the availability of housing, the government is cutting the rate at which capital gains tax is paid on residential property. The higher rate taxpayers from 28% to 24%. Interestingly, this measure was scored as a revenue raiser in the budget, even though it's a tax cut, for the reason that the OBR assessed that it would incentivise people to dispose of assets, which would generate more income over time. Spring budget, lots of people have been talking about public services in the coffee beforehand. The government committed an extra £2.5 billion funding for the NHS England in 24-25, which maintains funding in real terms and supports further progress towards improved performance and reducing waiting times. The interesting point, I think, well, I find it interesting, I don't know whether you do, which goes beyond the headline numbers, is that the pandemic has had a significant impact on public sector productivity, which currently sits at 5.9% below pre-pandemic levels. So we're able to do 5.9% less in real terms with each pound than we could do previously. The OBR say that raising public sector productivity by 5% would be the equivalent of an extra £20 billion of funding for public services. So that's the reason for that particular focus for the government. The government announced last week the next steps in the public sector productivity programme, including a comprehensive NHS productivity plan backed by over £3.4 billion of funding to reduce the 13 million hours of clinical staff time lost to poor IT every year. It's quite a big number. As well as revolutionising treatment for a range of illnesses such as cancer and strokes. Big announcement made last week. From April 2025, the government will abolish the current tax system for UK non-domiciled individuals, non-doms, and get rid of the outdated concepts of domicile and remittances in the tax system, which date back a very long time, replacing them with a simpler system based on residency. So wealthy individuals who come to the UK will pay the same tax in a fair way. This will raise £2.7 billion a year by 2028-29, while ensuring that the new regime is competitive for new arrivals, which brings us into line with other countries. And then other measures, new vape tax introduced, a new duty on vaping and increasing tobacco duty from October 26, making the property tax system fairer through a series of reforms to encourage transactions and level the playing field between short and long-term lets. And then the government announced that energy companies should continue to pay their fair share by extending the energy profits levy, often called a windfall tax, by a year to 28-29. So that's all the kind of the tax and spend stuff. And then the last third of the budget focused on how to generate growth, and that's the bit where the levelling up came in. So I might just skip to that. So the spring budget sets out how the government's delivering on growth measures announced in the autumn statement. So relevant to this area, £1 billion of new tax release to creative industries, including introducing a new UK independent film tax credit rate at a rate of 53%, introducing a 40% relief on business rates bills for eligible film studios. This is all about incentivising industries that promote growth. New measures to channel more investment from the money we save into investments in the UK. A new UK ISA with a £5,000 allowance. The Chancellor set out his intention to extend full expensing, tax write-offs, to assets for leasing when fiscal conditions allow, and will publish draft legislation shortly. Now, all of that's kind of technical stuff. What's the stuff for the North East? The budget included an announcement of a comprehensive package of measures to support further and deeper devolution across England, but the headline thing that everybody picked up on was a trailblazer, so slang for a deeper devolution deal with more powers for the North East Mayoral Combined Authority, NEMCO. So this deal is underpinned by the new devolution framework, which was announced in the autumn statement, but it gives NEMCO more control over housing and regeneration and adult skills we were talking about earlier, and local transport policy, the sorts of things that help you to drive growth in the region. It comes with a package of funding potentially worth over £100 million to support the region's growth ambitions via capital funding to remediate brownfield sites, revenue funding to accelerate key regional projects, and a growth zone with retained business rates growth. Relevance to both the North East and to Teesside, the budget also included more detail on investment zones. So the investment zone programme aims to catalyse 13 high potential, knowledge intensive growth clusters across the UK by bringing together government, research institutes and businesses in areas in need of levelling up to boost productivity and growth. We've got two of them in the North East. Each investment zone has been given a £160 million package, an envelope to use flexibly between spending on interventions such as skills, research and innovation, and local infrastructure, and a single offer of tax incentives, enabling each zone to target interventions where they will make the most difference. But it's up to each zone to decide how to target that package, so it's about regional ownership. The North East of England investment zone will support new investments and innovation in electric vehicle manufacturing, battery production, offshore wind, low carbon materials, building on the region's strengths that it's developed over in recent years, as well as advanced manufacturing, increasing prominence as a hub for clean energy. A combination of tax incentives and funding will be used to attract investment, stimulate innovation, and support businesses to grow in these sectors. Tax incentives will be available at Blythe Energy Centre in Northumberland and the International Advanced Manufacturing Strategic Site in Sunderland and South Tyneside. £20 million co-investment fund will unlock jobs growth along the Tyne-powered economic corridor and expand capacity at Net Park in County Durham. This will be complemented by £15 million for a skills package delivered with the private sector, as well as £15 million of infrastructure funding and £5 million to stimulate innovation and productivity growth across these sectors. The programme aims to secure major inward investors, encourage co-location of wider supply chains and support the growth of existing businesses. Together, the people involved locally in the investment zone estimate that these proposals will leverage at least £3 billion investment and create more than 4,000 new jobs over the next 10 years. Tees Valley Investment Zone, as you know, will focus on creative and digital sectors and aims to catalyse further investment to boost productivity, provide specialist sports businesses in these sectors. The government announced in the budget that Numa Group, the parent company of video games developer and publisher Double 11, has committed to making the first new major contribution to the investment zone. The group's investing £15 million pounds to support Double 11's growth, including investment in fit-out for commercial space and new state-of-the-art offices for the games company to further scale its production capacity, as well as increase its attractiveness to talents globally while ensuring its teams have access to top-tier technology. Now again, local partners, the people running the investment zone, expect the Tees Valley Investment Zone to potentially unlock up to £175 million in additional investment and create more than 2,000 jobs over the next 10 years. Final point, more broadly in the package, but particular relevance to this region given its strengths. The Advanced Manufacturing Package agreed at the budget last week, where the government announced over £360 million in joint government and industry funding for projects in life sciences manufacturing and in aerospace and automotive R&D, and the £120 million increase in the Green Industries Growth Accelerator. So these are wider pots of money that will be available here, and given our strengths, you'd expect us to make use of them. So, you know, there's a lot of detail, and not all of it was reported in the media. The headline will have been picked up about the discussions on NICs and tax, but underneath those headlines, there was an awful lot in there for the North East. As you listen to the speech, you'll have had your own reactions. Some of it you'll have agreed with, some of it you won't have. No doubt there'll be lots of debate in the panel discussion. Really keen to hear what people have to say. I think there's like one point I'd end on, which is that I also have a reaction, which is I think this was over the last couple of fiscal events. These were times when I've listened to the Chancellor's speech on the TV, and as he's been announcing measures, I thought, oh, that person in Darlington worked on that thing, and that person in Darlington worked on that. So as the Chancellor spoke, it struck me how much of this, although it was all down to political decisions made by ministers, given their political priorities, advice given to them, by officials here in the northeast of England from people who are new to the civil service, who are bringing excellent talents and excellent experience. Civil servants based in the northeast played a major role in this on issues that the things that I picked out were housing, creative industries, regional devolution, the NICS cut, and the wider tax regime. So no matter what you think about all the measures in the budget, hopefully you'll think that's a good thing. Overall, it feels to me it's good for Darlington, it's good for the region, and it's certainly good for the Treasury in terms of the sort of organisation that we want to be. So that's my summary, Mike. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion in the panel.
Thank you very much. Well, so much information there, some really big figures. Great to hear, of course, the amount of work that was done in Darlington, as Matthew says, from people who weren't necessarily part of the civil service, drawn here, giving their insight and experience. That's absolutely key for us, but also interesting to hear Matthew's summary of the good things for the North East in that budget. That's what we want to hear. What we also want to hear, of course, is the views of businesses across a whole range of sectors. Did it work for them? What were the pluses? What were the minuses? So, can I ask our panel, please, to come and take their seats at the front? We'll get underway. Thank you. Here we go. Sure. Super. Cool. Let's get ourselves camera ready. There we go. Right. So the whole thing about Level Up, of course, is to bring different voices to the discussion. How it affects individual businesses, how they take on all sorts of different themes that we have through the year. And this, of course, is the budget key event for our businesses, of course. Rachel, let's start with the chamber. Let's put it down to really nice and neat, sort of a marks out of 10. When you heard that, the budget, and you heard Matthew's details, did you think, wow, 10 out of 10? Or and we can be confident this is a good open conversation.
It's between us, isn't it? Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, as a chamber policy team on budget day, we all come together as a policy team. There's 8 of us, and we dissect the budget as soon as the book drops, and then we go to the pub too after that when we finish. And normally we're still working on it about 6:30, 7 o'clock. We were in the pub by 5 o'clock this time. So I think there wasn't a huge amount that was in it necessarily for business measures, but we got a lot in the autumn statement, so that was. I think in terms of marks out of 10, it depends what lens you look at it through. If you look at it through a regional lens, around that big Trailblazer devolution deal, around the investment zones for the Tees Valley, 20 million for Darlington. Can't think why we got that. It was 20 million for Darlington Town Centre. Actually, I think in terms we probably did better out of it than any other region in the country in terms of that movement. And the Trailblazer deal is huge. It's not just about the money, it's about the powers that come with it, and particularly slightly nerdy things like an energy council that will put energy infrastructure in place around those investment zones. That's a really big deal. Some of the things around DWP, that's a really big deal in terms of those powers, and it's something to be worked on. You could probably argue, should that have been a budget announcement or should it have been a DLUC announcement? And I think there was a bit of a fight going on as to who got to announce it. But actually, really huge for the region. So in terms of that, I think definitely 7, 8 out of 10 for the region. I think in terms of a lens of if we wanted an example of how having our Treasury officials, having civil servants in our region, out around the country. I think one example in the budget for me with that was the tax relief that was given on touring productions and orchestras for the arts sector. We know that measure was something that came as a direct result of the team in the Treasury meeting with regional arts venues, and certainly that measure in the budget that they pressed for very hard is probably worth about £1 million each to places like the Globe in Stockton, the Glass House in Gateshead. In a time when we've got a big squeeze, that is really significant, and that's a direct result of civil service listening in the regions. So I think from that point of view, definitely an 8-9. Where it falls down for me slightly, well, it falls down a lot in the budget, and we're in 3-4 territory here, is if you look at the budget book and the nerdier parts of it, which we do, page 25 and 26, go have a look. Is around what the departmental allocations are going to be, the departmental spend for the next 2 or 3 years, and other than education and the NHS, every single department is cut in budget, some of them really significantly, and that's what we're looking at. We're in a space at the moment where members are telling us that actually some of those cuts are now starting to really impact on productivity. So if you look at something like planning, we've got planning times now going from, what were 12 weeks running out to 6 months, 12 months. I even heard of one that's 4 years the other day. We're going to get to a point where the cut is too much that impacts on productivity. So I think for me, those departmental cuts are trouble to come. And probably a 2 or 3 out of 10 for that.
It's interesting, isn't it, how people home in on different elements of this, and people think, okay, that matter seems important. These people, as you say, like the arts, these sort of things are absolutely vital to different sort of sectors. People are sat there in front of their TVs, thinking like, let's hope they get something for theirs. You've got to sort of piece it together. It's also quite, I suppose, from the Chamber's point of view, you've got sort of so many members across so many sectors, you must be getting deluged with some people who, from that point of view, are saying, well, that was just what we hoped for. Others saying, there is that sort of, there's a balance, isn't there, that some of your members are going to be thinking, fantastic, I can press forward, some are thinking that was a step back. But striking that balance is really difficult.
You can't please all of the people all the time,
Yeah.
most definitely. Not a lot in there for SMEs. There was a slight move on back thresholds of 5,000, but to be honest, that's probably neither here nor there. And a lot of SMEs probably wanted some more movement on things like employer and I, looking at sort of making it easier, some real kind of comfort on business rates that wasn't in there, and yeah, that is some of the pressure that we get from our smaller businesses across the region. I think generally there wasn't a lot that our businesses were particularly upset about, which is always a bonus. But you're quite right, it is a balance, and different sectors will be winners and losers in this.
Were the phone lines hot the following morning?
Not particularly, no. They were.
That's another thing that people really get. Thanks, Matthew. It's vital stuff. Do people actually get energised by the budgets?
It has happened in the past. The pasty tax was a dreadful one. That was probably the worst one that we got, which we got an awful lot of producers and retailers who said that, this goes and this is unworkable, and that's when you find budgets unravel. This one hasn't so much, because I don't think there was a huge amount that was there that businesses could get hold of. It felt like it should be an election budget. It probably wasn't, but the audience was the voter rather than the business, I think, for this one.
Yeah, interesting. It's a good point you make. Christian you asked a question. We have some pre-submitted questions. I'll put it for you, but it was basically, did this seem obvious, and for any of the panelists, did it seem obvious that this was a budget for a pre-election? Was it a lead up to an election sort of budget? Did that Was that the general vibe, or not particularly?
It's clear they're on electioneering manoeuvres at the moment, but it didn't feel like an imminent one to me, but I could be entirely wrong. Like, I change my opinion on a daily basis as to whether it's May or October, it didn't feel like that to me. It made me wonder whether we might be heading for some conference announcements or an autumn statement before we get an election.
Okay, general feeling, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Mike. I think it's kind of setting the tone. I think for me it was a budget of 3 halves, if I might use that footballing term, because for our residents in County Durham, it was a reasonable budget, and I think once embedded in terms of the rises to the national living wage, the national insurance reductions, etc., changes to the child benefit scheme, I think people in a few months will maybe feel that they're not getting poorer, if that's a fair thing to say. So in terms of our residents, I think probably a good thing, and probably gearing up for a later announcement about an election in the autumn. I think in terms of local government, not great for local government. I think in real terms we're now looking at a 3.4% cut, which means that we'll be looking at deeper, harder cuts next year again. So not great for local government. But I think economically brilliant for our region, very exciting in terms of the Trailblazer stuff, and I might talk a bit more detail about that later on. But yeah, economically excellent, and I think having the team in Darlington does make a difference, and I think we're starting to see it now, that people understand what the region is about and what the region is aspiring to be.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point which Matthew again touched on, that when the economic campus arrived here, they wanted to do the recruitment of course, and part of that was to become part of, to recognise being part of Asia, but also part of it was to give that entirely local insight. The people who used to work in schools and businesses like that can now come and say, this is really what it's like. It's similar to what the event is here today. Let's get really right down to the actual people who are directly involved and affected. What are their views, and hopefully feed all that in. That's important.
Mike, I was going to say though, just hidden away, I can't give the page reference, sorry Rachel, I don't have the page reference like you do. There was hidden away though a small sentence in that will be the last budget restatement before the next general election, hidden away in the red book. So read into that what you will. If we take previous year's autumn statement, normally around about November time, does that mean that there will be an election this side of the autumn? Who knows?
In the general thinking it should be sort of September, October-ish, but
Changes day by day, doesn't it, really?
And a lot of that maybe depends on what the elections do in May. And there's so much feeding into it, which is why it's such a fascinating time at the moment. Things are moving so fast, and one thing leads to another, and what they do then will lead into what happens in the election, what happens in the local election, what happens at those meetings. It's what makes the region so fascinating. Let's go to Darlington Building Society and talk about Chris Owen Mortgages. Simply not feeling that Matthew again touched on that there's a lot of movement, a lot of thinking, of course, about codes and mortgages and getting people on the ladder and all that sort of thing. What was the Building Society's view of it?
Yeah, I think for us, we're passionate about our sort of ethos about getting people into first-time buyers on the property ladder, getting people good returns on their savings. What we call for in the sort of pre-budget sort of rhetoric was really some adjustments to the sort of ISA allowances to try and increase that to incentivise savings. We don't want people to be caught with the fact that rates are going up and people are getting caught into the sort of paying tax on their savings. So we asked for that, and we didn't really see anything in terms of the increase in the ISA allowance. Did welcome the £5,000 British ISA. I think that's a really good sort of incentive.
Yeah.
I think the devil's in the detail, and obviously there's some debate about when that comes into play, 2025, but the change of election with Labour probably not supporting at the moment, so whether that goes ahead. I did welcome the conversation around ISA reforms, so looking at that, we're going to be working with the UK Finance and BSA on trying to sort of champion that. There's an element of the sort of personal savings allowance. I would like to have seen that increase a little bit as well, because it's been sort of 500 for high tax earners and 1,000 for lower. But you know, it'd be good to see some adjustments to that, given the fact that rates have gone up and people are getting taught into that sort of savings tax. And we want to create a nation of savers, and I think anything that we can try and encourage savers is really important. In terms of the mortgage market, we sort of champions, we need to see more activity, I think, in terms of increasing supply of housing. It's a long known issue that we haven't got, the shortage of stock is just driving the price. We have gone through a period of a bit of a readjustment, but the economics, just there to say that's still a supply issue. I think there's something like 250,000, 250,000 of derelict homes across the country, which, if we could take action to try and bring some of those up to habitable status, then that would really help us with housing stock. We've seen really good activity over the years in terms of the Help to Buy programme, and that's something that we kind of want to see and something that maybe got brought back in the industry, sort of champion that. Likewise, on the Help to Buy ISA scheme, that was again a really good scheme to try and incentivise savers to put money away, young people to put money away, to then benefit from being able to own their own home and have that sort of bonus and support from the government. But I realise that it's really difficult, budgets are tight across all the sort of government departments, and aware of that. But these are the kind of things that we're looking for and hoping for. We are as a business looking to innovate and look at sort of working with third parties to try and bridge that gap and try and get more first-time buyers into that area. And we've launched schemes like Help to Build and First Homes. It'd be good to see First Homes accelerate a little bit more. It seems like it's stalled and plugged us out a bit, so if we can get that moving, that'd be really good. I think that's a real opportunity to get more housing stock available for people and provide access to funding for that. But I think overall, there was some really good components in it. So, ISA, 5 grand ISA, increasing ISA allowance, that was good in terms of British ISA. It's great to see from a regional point of view, 20 million being invested in sort of Darlington. Great to see, and put the road in some of the creative industry getting that trailers. Yeah. These are really exciting things. I'm a Sunderland lad, so it's brilliant for me to be part of that. I talked to Gavin earlier on around some of the challenges Sunderland's faced, and it's great to see that regeneration across the North East. So really good to see more investment in that space.
Is it too soon for you to have had a reaction from the customers, the people who are working with us? Have they been coming in and saying, because of that, I want to move things about, I want to make one move now? Has that happened yet, or too soon?
I think it's a little bit too soon. I think people are just weighing up the sort of the impact on them, and the new ISA allowances come through next sort of the 5th of April. There'll be some interesting conversations held with our members around that. From first-time buyers, we're constantly engaging with brokers and housing associations, house builders around how we can support them. And we'll just continue that dialogue. But we need, I think, as an industry, we're trying to bring support for first-time buyers and get as many people on housing as possible. Break down the barriers.
Yeah, just to sort of pin you down, that as you say, getting that onto that first run, absolutely vital. Do you think it was? Are they halfway onto that first run? Are we taking a little bit of a step back? What would be general summary?
Yeah, I think there's a real will and desire, and I think the generation sort of individuals, I think there's a real passion to try and save for that in terms of. But I read a stat recently which said that 50% of the first-time buyers have sort of given up almost, and I think we just need to incentivise and encourage and find a way of demystifying the challenge around saving for a deposit, and also provide available finance, so that 5% loan that we can get out there and incentivise people to try and get there, working with house builders to try and bring more housing stock to the market and supporting them with products that enable that. So we recently launched an OMG product, and that's another sort of sign of creativity in the mortgage market, which kind of supports and enables people to get cheaper finance, and that's the goal really, because the way that rates have gone up, it's really become more difficult for first-time buyers to get into that level.
Yeah, I think it's the same with all businesses. You can't stand still. You can't have a plan that's going to be the same all the time. It's just affected so many times. Such as the fast-moving region that we haven't even had a chance to update our panel with one extra. Could you introduce yourself first, David?
Siobhan McCardle, so I'm chair of the Chief Family Business Board. So we've replaced the LEP, so the old LEP, but the difference being the Business Board has 12 private sector business leaders on it, and the public sector stepped down from it. So we work in collaboration, obviously, clearly, but we found that the LEP ran to a very public sector agenda, and the private sector board was a bit lost in the public sector agenda. So we now have a private sector LEP board, policy business, excuse me, across the Tees Valley.
So what's the Tees Valley view then? Or you
So-
sorry, beg your pardon. I'm keen to know when the budget happens. Is it a gathering? Do you still literally get yourselves together in a room and turn the TV on and sort of all plough through? Does it not happen quite
No,
formally?
not so much for the business board because we're all running our own businesses. So we did have a very active WhatsApp group, and we do have a very active WhatsApp group.
Right, so lots of chat
As the
on there,
budget
yeah.
was unfolding, we had some interesting chats and debates about what was happening. In terms of Tees Valley particularly, it was a good budget for us in terms of shoring up a lot of the things we've been working on. So investment zone, we've got extension of the tax relief to Freeport, which is an important part of our investment strategy. So it had some very strong confirmations for us of things that we have in the pipeline and we're working on, and which now becomes very practical and pragmatic, and we can get moving on. I think one thing that's important is the investment zone needs will have oversight from the business board, so effectively the Tees Valley Business Board will be the Tees Valley Investment Zone Board, and that's quite important for business because that needs to clear voice of business in planning how that money is deployed in terms of both in the sectors that we focused on, which is digital and creative. So we see much more of a very, very clear policy of business and development of Tees Valley business growth strategy and effective deployment of the resources to make that happen. I think what we did feel into the point Rachel made about SMEs, they were particularly hit by COVID and there wasn't much in there for them, and that's a big sector, and that's how big it is. We have 18,000 SMEs across the Tees Valley. So in terms of that group, we'll be able to purchase them the other investment zone and support that sector, particularly in the creative and digital sector. We have a lot of SMEs, but it would be nice to see a bit more on that in terms of budget and how it's developed. And the point made also about social care and what was in it for local authorities. As a region, we have the highest cost in terms of adult social care, massive impact, and that will impact on growth. And so, not much in that. And one of the key objectives of the business board is to drive inclusive economic growth. So again, we have some great problems to solve in terms of how do we deliver skills in our growth strategy, and nice problems to solve. We've also got some really awful problems to solve around child poverty and just poverty and deprivation in general. So, and again, these things all impact growth and your ability to grow as students. So again, that's what we would like to see slightly more of. The business board's independent. We deliberately set it up so that it's apolitical, so that we stay out of the party political fights. That we obviously in all meetings to watch them, but we are asked to review sometimes the voice of reason in that debate. But it's important that we're very much seen as a bigger generation, not a political cycle. And we were only set up in January, so given the year we're running into and what we knew was going to happen with the mayoral election, we'll have a general election. We're sort of seen now as the constant, we're the constant in all of that. But in terms of Tees Valley, did we win in that budget? We did.
Interesting to hear as well. When you hear about business board, isn't business focused. It's about, as I was saying before, so many things. One thing leads to another, one starts to something. You don't have the skills, you don't have the approach.
As with business and as with economic growth, people that deliver strategies. We haven't got people, and the people aren't fitting well to deliver that, then we won't grow. So we're very good in our approach.
Thanks. Good to have you. Hey, let's talk about start. Again, that's sort of my straightforward question. When you saw what the budget was delivering, did you think, right, we can do some? Or does it even create challenges for you? How is it viewed generally?
Probably a bit of a mix. I think I approach panel comments about the region, there's some positives there, and I think training about these, we see that very positive. There was definitely some positives for our customers and our staff. Increased thresholds in the household support fund being extended for 6 months. Again, we applied for that fund in 40 times. So again, with that benefit, I think the Racial Plan as a business, there's probably a limited amount there for us. And I think, you know, as a business that has a long-term financial plan, long-term funding in place, there's some challenges there around, you know, what are some of the things that we are looking to do, revenue supply and kind of investing in new homes. You know, there's nothing out there in terms of home program beyond 2020. You know, we're currently looking at schemes that go beyond that. We have no sense of that. Not really anything around decarbonisation, and that again is a long-term strategic priority for us. So when we're looking at some of our financial planning, that is really challenging for us in terms of how we take that forward. And, you know, as a business, we are looking at productivity, how we work, how we can be more efficient. You know, because we
Is it the sort of budget where some of this will have to be, you have to react to it, you're going to do things if your ethos changes in some way?
I don't think it has particularly affected our ethos and that. So what I can tell him is that we have to go back and revisit particularly some of our long-term financial plans and that we change the direction that we're moving in. So, you know, that's definitely telling in terms of some of the things like sort of passing to our calling for a more certainty around rents, funding, you know, how we're going to fund of to look like. And again, you know, what the election year, there isn't any sort of difference for them. Quite key for us, the business, quite key.
Sam, let's talk about Raise Blue. Probably in a way an ideal sort of company the government was deeply driven, job creation, learn to grow. That's it. Did you feel the love in the budgets came out here? They're really backing it.
I think it certainly brought a certain opportunity for the future. You know, there's obviously a long-term strategy there to grow, like the North East, you can see that being for investment.
Sure.
Brought into it. So from that perspective, there's a tremendous amount of potential. For me, it's correcting that growth, but you've got to have the skills and the workforce coming up through that. They're not just coming up through education today, but also within the existing workforce as well. You know, we're progressing rapidly with this technology, looking at artificial intelligence, etc. But we need to have the skills and understanding how to develop that. That helps also to work with it so it's effective for our businesses as well. So I think the strategies around skill growth, skill development have to be aligned with that business economic, macroeconomic sort of strategy to deliver effectively.
As a CFO, to your ability of plans and all that sort of how far ahead you normally feel you can. You wait for a budget and then say, right, this is stone.
I don't think you can look just at a single plan. You've got to think with the wider bigger picture and not just within the region, but wider than that as well. What's happening sort of nationally and how we can support and develop that. What are the new opportunities in terms of growth, new sectors, security being an example of that? Sure. You know, it's a multitude of factors that need to be considered. And also the ambition of the business and delivering value to the business as well. So it's not just one thing like budget, it's a collection.
But the foundation things that are raising companies like that feel there's more growth. You're confident to be, obviously you've got your own ambitions, but given the infrastructure, feel there's a way forward.
Most definitely, yes. And I think with alliances, with like etc. like that, you know, I think you can develop that quickly, but also serving our clients as well. And you're looking after them, making sure that they can operate as efficiently, as effectively, and as lean as possible.
As you say, that still seems a huge, in fact, because you've got to have that constant, because you can grow, you've got to constantly be feeding the engine.
We've got that, we need to have that resource to do that and to inspire people to want to go into those kind of sectors, see what the opportunities are.
It was interesting actually, Mike, that's the one of the things that was missing out of the budget. There was almost nothing on education and skills in there at all. There was a tiny bit around special schools and specialist provision, but nothing else in there at all for education and skills. You can argue it's picked up elsewhere in devolution deals, in various things, but given it's such a central plank of the success of an economy, you kind of expect something to be in there, and it was just missing this time.
Certainly key enabler for that growth.
Yeah. Does organisations like the Chamber get involved in? We get involved in the budget drafts?
We make a submission, to the Chancellor, but along with many other organisations, and there is a formal process for making that budget submission. And we start our consultations with members right across the region, usually around about 6-7 weeks before budget submission deadline, and we pull together a letter of what is vexing our members at any particular time. We have planks of what we want to see, but we pick that intelligence up from our members from right across the patch.
As like you said, that's like really grassroots.
Yeah, it's gold.
So, you're not going to be able to read everybody, but having to see a full picture of how this region operates. Elizabeth, we touched on take on this area of the trailblazer, sort of huge thing that sort of the general feeling might be that this is not.
Yes, economically indeed, yes, and in terms of investment, I was interested in the Tees Valley inclusive economic strategy, because we have an inclusive economic strategy for the county. It's not the council's strategy, it's for the county. And it very much looks at where are our key assets, where are the investment opportunities, and drills quite far down into what we specifically feel we need to do to drive growth and investment for the county. So in terms of that, yeah, brilliant. I mean, we had the announcement that we've had £73 million worth of strategic transport money over 2 years, so next year and the year after, which is really important in terms of how we link up employment sites with residential areas, because we're a huge county, and I think this is some of the thinking that has been forgotten over the years about how you actually not just create jobs, but get people from where they live to those jobs. So we're able to make some strides with that. The culture sector is a huge plank of our strategy, and so important. And what it unlocks in terms of Fulwell 73 in Sunderland is just incredible. I was saying to Ollie at the back there earlier on, I've got a son starting an apprenticeship later this year, electrical engineering, and things like that really make me excited for his future. There are just different kinds of opportunities opening up, and we have to focus on that. £15 million for the National Railway Museum, which of course everybody thinks York, but actually locomotion here in County Durham is part of that museum and part of the National Science Museum Group. So, it's all exciting stuff. Yes.
Massive sort of driving projects. You feel further ahead now because of what sort of laid out?
Without a doubt, and the way in which they can now be marketed, the way in which the market talks about those sites, I think it raises the game definitely, and puts more of a national and international perspective on those opportunities.
Coming down things like with culture. Pushed on before how important that starts. Forgive the very obvious question. Why would the council not want to be put into culture when it's got so many other issues?
How do you sort of knit that into the whole
Yeah.
picture and its importance?
Because I think it is a key driver of economic growth, and it's about it creates jobs in and of itself. It's a major contributor to the tourism economy, which last year in County Durham we topped £1 billion value, and actually, if we were playing it right, we should be double that. So, you know, and culture is a big driver of people coming to the county to spend their money and spend their time. But all of the other industries on the back of that, in terms of accommodation, in terms of food and drink, and all those other things, it is just vital. We were also awarded last year Place Partnership status through the Arts Council, and that is real investment, 1.25 million into the industry, and we're focusing really heavily on skills with that money, to say actually we're lacking in technical skills, we're lacking in lots of different stratas of skills that contribute to that, management, leadership, all of that sort of thing. And that's where we are focusing some of that investment.
Yes, go on.
Particularly investment on not just place culture, but our creator, and also what that means in terms of, you know, the Sunderland film studio and the Hartlepool Production Village, what we can achieve in the North East, and what that actually means for creative jobs, but also engineering jobs, what it takes to move and all that, but also, importantly, that, well, culture creates access for everybody, so it raises aspiration, it raises, you know, that ambition to be part of a growth story, but the culture spending in Tees Valley is very important that we make sure we combine that with science in some of our innovative technology, bioeconomy, all of that comes together in the cluster strategy in the Tees Valley. So we need, you know, we do need fundamental integrity, culture and creativity, which actually underpins our manufacturing strategy and our management strategy, life science strategy and skills strategy.
Where do you feel you are on the road to building that into a single sort of structure, an interlinked sort of structure?
So that's what we're going to do through the investment zone programme. That's how we really will, and that's why we were quite pleased to see how that was positioned and that we got signed up on that in the budget. That now enables us to work on collaborative projects which really drive that combination of science and creativity. So we have a vehicle to do it.
As a little bit the same infrastructure, you know, altogether to simplify.
Yeah,
putting certain businesses there is great. In fact, you've got to get to it, you've got to enable it.
Absolutely, and Tees Valley strategy is a cluster-based strategy, and obviously we do very well in the transport, we've got the ability to transport, and you know, anybody that lives in the Tees Valley, it's very difficult to move from one end of the Tees Valley to the other, so we can create jobs in Hull, we live in Salford, you know, you're going to spend a day getting there. So actually, you know, I know our mayor wants to do it, there are various innovative ways of getting across rivers and all sorts of things which is possible. We're all going like, okay, we probably have one track around in a circle and maybe one ferry across the government, but we'll have both. And again, the business board is leading on the transport agenda, but also what's important, which we saw when the combined authority and the mayor announced the prioritisation of that budget, is that within there are the grass capital, but what was ring fenced in there was when they saw inclusive travel, which business board asked for. So that was kind of the first thing we saw we had a real impact on since January, when we sort of talked to them and the command authority to say, if we've got infrastructure but people can't to ride on infrastructure, then you know some of our more, particularly our modern private areas, still can't access the great opportunities created. So you know it does feel, and we were very excited at the Tees Valley and put back into presenting as the business board because lots of things are coming together, many years of work. You know, and as I say, we've got lots of challenges, but you know, we need to push forward and, you know, irrespective of politics, just push forward on the great growth opportunities we have.
I mean, it's same across the whole panel, certainly, there's a genuine excitement about delivery. It's happening, just an awful lot of background work going on, a lot of slog, a lot of documents and agreements, and the feeling that over the next couple of years, change is going to be.
Yeah.
Things are going to be delivered and happen.
Undoubtedly, it feels like we're on the cusp, and we just got to keep the push and the drive. And I think absolutely right that the private sector has to have a strong leadership role in that. And you know, it's not one isn't good and one isn't bad, public-private sector, but you've got to play to your strengths, and the public sector has to be an enabler, because with the money diminishing, the amount of things that the public sector can do diminishes too. So you've got to give some of that away and say, crack on, actually, and we'll support you, and we'll make sure the infrastructure's right.
That's a good point to take up. In so many different views, there are so many different sectors, pluses and minuses. Give us an overview from Womble Dickinson's view of the building.
Well, thanks for having me this morning. I'm a partner in our transport infrastructure team at Womble Bond Dickinson. So I'm the lawyer in the room. There's always one of us. I come at this in kind of some of my first comments that I'll make on the budget from the area that I focus on, transport and infrastructure, and we've heard from a number of the panelists about that. And it feels niche and feels specific, but actually I'd throw the challenge back out there to everybody in the room. Actually, my view is that transport and transport infrastructure is really the key enabler to delivering on devolution and delivering on the levelling up agenda. It connects our towns and cities. It gets people from A to B for education, for job opportunities. It delivers, hopefully, sustainable growth. And importantly, here in the North East, it delivers on increasing opportunities for social mobility and what we've talked about earlier, kind of reducing poverty and child poverty. So for me, it's fundamental and drives through everything that I always look at budget time. Notwithstanding what some of my colleagues on the panel have already said, some very positive things, I thought the budget was a bit underwhelming from a transport and infrastructure perspective. Hidden away in the Red Book, again, don't know the page reference, sorry Rachel, but you had and I'm happy to be challenged on this and told that I'm wrong, but you had the Department for Transport budget being cut by about 32%. And what does therefore that mean for our public services and our transport infrastructure going forward? Speaking to clients, and I've just got kind of a couple of notes here so I can actually kind of give you their thoughts. There was a feeling prior to the budget, and hopefully they'd see something along those lines, that we really needed to prioritise long-term funding so that there was certainty for public transport, whether that's in the rail sector or the bus sector, kind of long-term funding settlements for buses to provide certainty. I'm sure we've all taken advantage of the £2 bus fare, which is great, but there will be a cliff edge at some point, and having that long-term funding certainty helps the local authorities, combined authorities, bus operators in planning that provision. Again, something that we heard, and it wasn't particularly in the budget, but kind of end to this kind of incessant competition for funding. Whether it be levelling up or otherwise, which is a drain on local authority resources. There's no degree of certainty that you will receive that funding in transport, and actually kind of high level of what we heard in the budget. There was some funding in Cambridge for transport initiatives, great. There was some funding for East West Rail that links Oxford and Cambridge, again. Great, and there was 260 million of levelling up funding for Canary Wharf. Great, not particularly northeast based though. So, and there was, I was reading some kind of budget commentary from the Campaign for Better Transport. We heard about the freeze on fuel duties, and I suspect we're all car users. I'm certainly not in the space of demonising people who use their cars. They all serve a purpose, but I also represent a number of bodies who are interested in promoting public transport. And Campaign for Better Transport, I was reading just after the budget had said those freezes on fuel duties amount to 4.2 billion that could have gone into the coffers, and 4.2 billion would have covered 3 times the support that is being provided to the bus industry at the moment to provide better services and more buses. and would have frozen rail fares for the next 3.5 years. So there's you know, there's six of one and half a dozen of the other, in a balancing act at all times to make. But I want to be positive as well, because I'm a local lad. I'm from right here in Seaham Harbour, and I think it's important to be positive about what's happening in the region. The Trailblazer devolution deal, as we've talked about, is fantastic for the new North East Mayoral Combined Authority. And in that, again, from a transport perspective, we've got 50-60 million funding for what I would always describe as kind of one of our crown jewels, the Tyne and Wear Metro. We're very lucky to have the Metro not on our doorstep. So if anybody from Transport North East is watching this, I'd love an extension to see him at some point, but we'll see. We are very lucky. We like to complain when it's not running to time or the Metro's down. But think of the number of cities who would die to have a system like that. So we should always talk that up. So more funding there. We're looking at rolling out smart card and pop card technology just to make it so much easier to get around the region, and talking about some of the things that we were talking about earlier. New North East local rail board that will focus on where we actually enhance our local rail services and infrastructure investments, again, which is brilliant. The Leamside line, we can't let an event go by without mentioning Leamside line and looking at investment there. Had support from the government, albeit I'd say a small beer at the moment, £350,000 to help in looking at a strategic outline business case for that. But it's a start. And as I say, I'm keen as a local resident, as a taxpayer, as everything that we're fully behind the measures that we're seeing in the North East. And you know, I can't let the opportunity go by without seeing again the Crownworks Studios in Sunderland. What a game changer that could be, and as a great announcement for the region. You know, promising, fingers crossed, 8,500 jobs, the boost in tourism, the boost in the creative industry. You know, seeing Tom Cruise wandering down the River Wear, you know, is possible. It would have been possibly a joke a few years ago, maybe a possibility now. But yeah, some thoughts there.
Probably Rachel, just looking longingly at me, or
no, I think widening out that 3-year funding settlement. We have a cracked situation at the moment where our local authorities don't know from one 10-month period to the next what their funding is going to be. It means you can't plan. You wouldn't run a business like that. You can't plan. You can't do all the things that local authorities are being asked to do whenever shrinking budgets. It's really a silly system that we have, and 3-year settlements for all public bodies would be absolutely game changing.
Just a very to those tax boards as Jervis. Does it seem that Newcastle got left out a little bit? I mean, obviously, it's from that Newcastle start point of view, the sort of stuff happening Wigan Way and Sunderland Way and things like that. Maybe I just
No, I wouldn't say so, Mike. I think the feeling both within the office and with clients that we're talking to is that it's a very exciting time, and the Trailblazer deal and the devolution and the election of a new mayor for the whole geography is very exciting, with funding pots and powers that come with that. There's a lot still going on in Newcastle. Great place to be working and doing business. But as I say, it's also great to see that there's investment now in Sunderland, in County Durham, down in Teesside, in Northumberland as well. We're back on the map. We're back on the map, and I want us to be in a position where we are rightfully battling alongside the Greater Manchesters and the West Midlands, because that's where we deserve to be.
Any questions from the audience before I ramble on again? Are we all content with that? We think it's good budgets, bad budgets? Please don't look at me and raise any points. Yes. You raise your hand.
So my name is Lucy Herbert. I'm the head of history, sociology and politics at East Durham College. So what we've seen, I've got 2 students with me today who've travelled from Hartlepool and Seaton Crew today. And one of the biggest problems that we're facing as a college is transport links between Hartlepool and Peterlee. We serve some of the most deprived areas within our region as part of our college. And one of the big things that we've really noticed is we need those improved transport links between Peterlee. So just, Lucy, how long did it take you guys to travel up to here from? Really impacting our students' education. So we're wondering, is there any plans to kind of, I know that the Department for Transport has a massive put in terms of its budget, and there's been a massive put in terms of like council budgets as well, but is there any possibility of, you know, pushing forward for that, maybe a little bit more investment in terms of transport to make it easier for our students to access education so we can then help them to develop the skills that business needs?
Is it not just a simple point of it's just a fleet of things that really accurate?
Do you know, I sit on the Joint Transport Committee for the North East area, so I'll put in a good word for Kevin about the metro. But no, in terms of buses, which we're very, very reliant on in these kinds of rural and far apart places, I actually, and this is me speaking personally now, not on behalf of Durham County Council, but I think the system is broken. And I think somebody somewhere, some really bright spark in business will come up with a solution that is different than what we have now, because buses travelling around with not very many people on, getting subsidised, and sometimes not being there is not efficient in any way, shape or form, and is a big drain on the system. And I've been through all of that. Would minibuses be better? It doesn't make any difference. You still need a driver, you still need the fuel, and you know, the capital costs are less obviously, but in terms of running a service, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And it's got to be around, I think, demand responsive. And we're trialling a few things in County Durham, like getting people to Boburn, to the Amazon site there. We're putting on a new, it will be like a minibus service to pick up workers whom there isn't a service, and there isn't going to be a service, because if the service isn't viable, where does the subsidy come from? So I think we've got to see a change in the way that the bus service operates. But of course, Transport North East and the joint transport whole system that we've had in Tyne and Wear, Durham and Northumberland will be subsumed into the new combined authority. And there will be more autonomy in terms of, you know, decision making locally. So you just, I have hope that things will improve, but I think there's going to have to be some structural changes for that to happen.
It's almost like the students.
There's an interesting point though, because in your particular case, you're going across an artificial boundary, because you're going from Hartlepool in the Tees Valley to Peterlee in the Menker area, and actually it's about how we get you to from your house to East Durham College, and I think, you know, there's an important point here. We've got to combine authorities, but we've got people across to work, to college, to school. Businesses work across boundaries; they don't see the boundaries. How do we make them work together? Is actually going to solve your conundrum then?
Yeah, I think on that. So in terms of, I mean, you are sitting in the Tees Valley, as you've just said. Back to the previous point I made, I think in the transport budget we have, there's around 50 million broadly that's around accessibility. But actually we do have freedoms to actually plan strategically, but must make sure we plan as a North East, because we do have residents moving across those artificial boundaries, as you say. So I think What the business board will be leading on is the inclusivity strategy, but what it needs to have is the customers in that group. So the way the business board is going to work is we have 12 business leaders, and then we're going to set up sort of time-limited action groups, but those time-limited action groups need to have the people that are travelling around on buses and, you know, taking 2 hours, and because actually we need to really understand what the problems are, and as you say, there's some smart people travelling on the buses actually who have already got the solution that we need to engage with and make sure that that's where the solution comes from, and then we get private investment and public money working to deliver that. So I think we're definitely very excited about the Tees Valley. I think you make a valid point that, you know, the North East isn't that big, so actually the opportunities we're creating, which are very exciting. We want people from Saltburn going to Newcastle, we want people from Newcastle coming down, God forbid, down to the Tees Valley, because there are opportunities down there. I think.
I'm just trying to get my head around some really obvious stuff. That if you have a travel system in Tees Valley, for instance, it's maybe £2 ticket for all day or something like that.
Yeah.
What does happen when that person wants to get from Tees Valley across to another?
Well, at the moment, I mean, the other thing about having a combined authority, a second one, there's a bigger player to do business with. It's easier to do business with two big organisations. So that's going to simplify it. And, you know, clearly Andrew Burnham's done great work in Manchester on all of this. So actually there's some lessons to learn from him that you wouldn't repeat. And there's lessons that, you know, that he really has sort of looked at the bus structures, etc., and the fee structure. So I think we've got, sometimes you do have to look to the Northwest, don't you go, actually, they've got certain things right, but they've sort of trailblazed that. So I think some of the answers are there, it's just how do we work together and build one North East, really.
I find it reassuring, because I'm a bit dense sometimes, but I find it simply reassuring that you're looking forward to never happen. It's not a matter of competition, thinking it's too big or against each other.
No, not at all. I think it's about just using this opportunity to collaborate far better than possibly we did previously. Because, you know, even with the LEP structure, you know, the North East, I talked to Lucy Quinsley about this all the time. You know, there was the North East LEP, well then, and then there was the Tees LEP. You know, it's kind of like, well, how did you manage to accommodate the North East LEP? So, but it was a false boundary. But I think we're already working more effectively together in that regard, but we have to, there's a responsibility to do that. But I think having a sort of travel path for young people so they can access, and also people on low incomes. So it's not just young people, is it? It's, you know, anybody that wants to take advantage of the great opportunities we're creating needs to be able to get there, and they need to be able to get there not in a way that actually takes half the salary. So, you know, transport is fundamental to all of this.
It is, you know, that simple thing again, that if you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people want to get one place to go, that might not be economically worth it. But if you've got a bigger number, or if it was a sort of an Uber thing or something like that, where it's on demand, where you can just dial it up and say, well, actually, I'm away to pick those 5 up or pick those 10 up.
Yeah, I think summarising it all, it's joined up thinking and collaboration, but with the passenger at the heart of that as well, and understanding what the trials and tribulations are of those in the region who are using our trains and our buses, because it's really only with that, armed with that information and data, that you can make the necessary changes for the better. But you're right, Mike. You know, running a big stinky diesel bus around rural areas of the northeast just it won't work in all situations. And as Elizabeth says, kind of looking at demand responsive, being able to pick up a phone and say, I'll be here at a certain time, and there is enough demand that a smaller bus can service that. Looking at opportunities from, again, didn't really touch on it in my kind of opening monologue, but sustainable transport as well, and the opportunities that zero emission buses, we seem to be talking a lot about buses, but it is the sexy subject at the moment. Talking about zero emission buses and electric and hydrogen, and again collaborating with colleagues down in the Tees Valley who are very much looking at developing hydrogen technology and how that can be used on our transport infrastructure in the northeast, trying to make effectively, as I think a number of the mayoral candidates in the northeast have already said, making the northeast the greenest place in the UK for transport, because not only does it help get our people from A to B, but actually it also has huge health benefits. You know, haven't even talked about NHS and everything else, but actually getting getting polluting vehicles, polluting trains off the network, and much more sustainable modes of transport is better for us all and better for the generations to come.
It's a really simple but absolutely vital point.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and I was getting on buses, you could smell a mile of diesel fumes. Depending on where you sat in the bus, you either got Uber next time, it's slightly higher by the time you got. But that's how technology, that's an awful long time. But that's how technology has changed, and that's the difference it can make. If you're going to get extra buses on the roads, 50, 60, 100 extra vehicles, you don't want them adding to the pollution, clearly.
Yeah. And there's some exciting plans, you know, again, with the candidates down in the Tees Valley and the candidates up here in the northeast. There's a lot of exciting plans, and you know, I'd urge you all to go and listen to what the mayoral candidates, because they will have a lot of authority and power over what happens from a transport perspective in the coming years. Listen to what they've got on offer. A lot around, it's Marmite. It's a Marmite subject, but bus franchising and bringing control of buses back into public ownership, and whether that's right and is a good thing or otherwise, we'll all have our views. But it's a big but, Mike. All of this costs. All of this does cost, and we've got to make sure that we've got funding and sustainable funding to be able to deliver this as well.
You don't want the users to burden that cost.
Yeah.
Show that cost. We want it to be as easy and cheap as possible. So somebody has to.
Or if the users do burden a bit of that at the start of it, the output of that is then reinvested to make, in this case, the transport network even better.
Chris, from a sort of almost geographical point of view, given what we're talking about there, does Darlington feel connected to the whole region? Does it feel part of a, obviously, combined authorities are getting bigger and bigger? Do you feel that sort of connectivity yourselves?
Yeah, I think so. As a business, we're trying to increase our footprint across the North East in terms of our visibility. But I feel like all these sort of regeneration activity that's taking place, it's really supporting our members out there. Really, some of the activities that we do through our 5% pledge, we're giving back to a lot of these communities. And we're touching quite a number of areas. And through these deals, we're able to support some of the initiatives that can and really support and drive us forward. But I do feel like the whole region is becoming more connected through some of this policy, some of these changes that are taking place. And as a society, we're keen part of that before coming in with ideas and support sort of local businesses.
Simon, I mean, I think you were talking about skills before. Again, that connectivity and what money there is, we mustn't move to authority budget issues, but what money there is for transport and infrastructure. That means people in certain parts of the region can come to your businesses more easily. It's a key thing.
That's it. So, like I said before, it's not just one area that there's multiple factors we need to be considering. Skills, let's say, but that is a key point. But yes, actually, your transport and making sure you can get to the place where it offers the course or the learning that you require.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted.
It's life without values. The beliefs or the belief ethos. It's a perfect example of that. As well as having the housing, being able to have housing there, being able to go where you need to go to support your family, to support your housing.
Yes, absolutely. It's absolutely fundamental, and it's really interesting listening to everybody talk. The focus that we've had over the last 10-15 minutes on transport, because it is vital. And I'm just reflecting back on some of the things that we've done as a business when we've been looking at some of the villages that we have properties in, some of the towns and cities, and what can we do to help the customers there, the residents there, the communities there, to achieve more and go out there and make the best of it, achieve their potential. And one of the things that constantly comes up is this point around the ability to actually get to somewhere, to move across the region. If you take London, for example, we used to work for an audit firm. We had a partner who had been London-based for a very long time and came to work in the Newcastle office and was absolutely horrified that there wasn't a sort of tube type of system that would be able to take her across the Anfield Plain for a meeting and say, we've covered such a wide range of sort of settlements, of villages, of towns, of cities. Transport to access to this is actually fundamental. I think, you know, all of the growth that we've got in the region is fantastic, but it's only going to work if we can get people to where they need to be.
Yeah, because there's always people who are dealing with no support, even a £2 or £3 fare is a challenge.
It's a challenge, and you know, it's widened trails across the region, you know, things like use of food banks, it's massively up, you know, and the concern that we have as a business is that sort of low income kind of household who might be part of a benefit system and might sit just outside of that, but equally, you know, are on a low income and can't afford to, you know, having to make some really difficult decisions about whether to eat, whether to leave the property. And that, you know, that's terrifying and really very sad in a society, you know, today. That's a conversation I think we're having a lot.
Do you feel that conversation, do you feel able to have a conversation that affects the stuff? Are you in that sort of group conversation, do you think?
I think social housing as a group, I think certainly as a region, I think we've definitely got a lot better at sort of working together, coming together collectively. We've been doing some work with some of the housing associations in terms of coming together to look at innovation and as a group, as a collective, what we might not be able to address individually as a business because we haven't got the resources to do. How can we work collectively and collaboratively to sort of you know, find a solution to an issue that all of us will benefit from and our customers will benefit from. I think as a sector we've definitely getting better at being able to tell the story, and I think that's the key for me is kind of really being very clear about, you know, what we can achieve and what we need from government and, you know, what like the CIA, you know, the Housing Federation who do have that sort of discussion, but it is very challenging. I mean, social housing in particular is always a long-term kind of, you know, area, isn't it? And so changing political views and political sort of parties just create a real challenge in terms of which direction might go.
Generally, when you tell your story, do you feel government listens? Are you a priority?
It was definitely encouraged on that, and I think we've got to reflect on ourselves as well as to how well we're telling the story about all the things that we do. I think, you know, if I go back to when I first joined the sector, and I joined at the point that there was a 4-year rent reduction in social housing, and I think that the sector did have to reflect on, you know, that point around they weren't telling the story very effectively, they weren't really making it clear, you know, what some of the things they were doing. And it is a balance, you know, there's obviously some challenges that we're facing in the sector, and there's some priorities that, you know, we do have to make some very difficult decisions, but it's about how we articulate that and really get that message across.
I suppose it's a very simple point, but depending on that agree or not, that having the Darlington Economic Campus actually here in the region now, and that's just saying that's how it takes the feeding of different opinions, that has made a difference, if only for the fact that we feel more able to go to them and knock on the door and say, I've got these issues, what can you do about that? That's a general vibe, isn't it? There's obviously that sort of development of powers and jobs and that sort of thing to the region.
I think it's just the opportunity to put different perspectives to the team.
Sure.
And you know, we'll have a perspective in our region, and I just think it's absolute gold in terms of the civil service really understanding of the landscape that we're working in, be that economic, be it political, be it geographical. I think, you know, that ability to gather those different perspectives, as I said, the example of the tax breaks for touring exhibitions and touring shows is a game changer in our region, for our venues, and you know, that comes from those conversations.
I think, Mike, just in terms of, I think it's brilliant having the economic campus here. I think what I'm really passionate about, we've got some great universities in the North East, and I think we generate so many really strong academic people who want to go on and move on to the next job and haven't found themselves moving away. And I think this just enables those universities to bring through those younger people and get them to stay in the region, and that just drives the whole economy because you've got more people staying in the North East, more people with really highly skilled jobs, and it's just really good for the North East. I'm really good with that.
Yeah, I mean, that because we've been talking so much about what the budgets and what general sort of regeneration is bringing to this region with massive changes. As we're talking earlier on, we've got to feed that right down to the young people that are going to be potentially our hosses in 15 years' time, probably less. And we've got to keep feeding them, we've got to enable them to get to the right sort of place where they're given the right sort of skills. Lucy, let's pop back to you for a second. The general view on your students on whether are they likely to stay in this region? They feel, as well as obviously they're coming to you for their education. Is there a general vibe that they're doing it so they can stay, or are they going to leg it to Andy Burnham?
I'll pass this one over to students. What do you guys think? Do you think there is opportunity for you here in the North East, or can you see yourselves maybe moving away to somewhere like Greater Manchester, somewhere like London, somewhere like the Midlands in order to access greater levels of opportunity?
Just a general view, do you think, a nod of the head will do, but do you feel, right, I'm going to stay here? Or, hands in the air, are you planning to build your career here in the North East? Hands in the air?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's simple, but that's so important. Because if they're not, then we're doing something really wrong. We're missing an absolute trick. Because we're training them here, as you're saying, we've got some fantastic universities, give them amazing skills, pinpoint training in the sort of skills that we think are going to be coming up at Teesworks or Cranworks or whatever. And if they say, oh no, you know, I'm going to go somewhere else.
But I think it's incumbent on us though, Mike, it kind of comes back to what I said before of being really positive, of talking up the region and talking up the North East for the future generations. So, you know, it's a bit odd of me to say that when my first point was I thought it was a bit underwhelming on transport, but nevertheless, I think we should be proud of the region and proud of what's happening in the region. We're not talking about it just for talking's sake. We're talking about because things are actually happening and there is a wind of change, and that needs to be filtered down to the younger people, to the next generation, so that they realise that you don't have to move to London or the South East to get a well-paid job that lets you get your foot on the housing ladder and grow a family. It can all happen here in the North East, and there's a lot to be proud of.
The conversation has to be honest enough to say that there have been saying there are obviously challenges here.
Yeah.
Working together, the opportunities that we can get, and as you say, we pitch that. You know, come here, look at this, look what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, for example, it's still a great opportunity to make like a business here because of the fact that it's quite a small place compared to like most of the big cities. Since, for example, so like sports law firms, for example, so like the closest one here would be from Leeds. And since all the other like new companies can start on like in the local area for the local, for example, football players, for example, Sunderland, Newcastle, this or then their players can come closer to home where they're at now, which will be like that for development for them since they don't have to travel as far to go see their like lawyer, for example. Which then I can put this on an example from my brother, because my brother made a core company here in the North East, which he stays in the North East to do this. And since he went down to London to start off his career, he decided to come back because it just wasn't big here.
Great. I love to hear that.
Yeah. So that's this balance there, isn't it, between we obviously have a certain character in this region, and people feel like can really make an impact in this place. So we want to be that big, we want to be that ambitious, but we don't attract people. And so, yeah, welcome in. We do. What a feeling that is about all the North East.
It's great because Kurt,
set up their own business, not just join a firm.
But we've had a long history of having a double whammy, which is that our really intelligent, bright sparks go off to other universities and never come back. And then all of these people come to our region to study and then just leave again. So we have to reverse that trend. And it is partly about saying, actually, right, there's lots of things that we haven't got right yet, but there's loads of headroom for growth. And that's really exciting for bright young people who want to start businesses. And like you say, that opportunity to do things here that we've not had before is real.
The thing I'm always bang on about is about timing too. The delivery of certain huge projects are coming. These young people know, okay, so I'm at this stage now, and I've got another 2 years or whatever my course at. What do I do, and what's going to be available then when I'm on the market? Because if you look around and there's nothing there for a few months, then that's going to be required. So having that training and that skills provision, education, at just the right sort of pace, and so finely focused, when they come out, the right sort of time, they're exactly the right skill, and that person is recruited. And it's a terribly big challenge. That's so important.
I think it's about delivering on like the opportunities that we've got today, and say, look, we were promised this, we've received this additional funding, we've taken that and capitalised and delivered results, and with the proofs in the pudding that, we had the chance, we delivered, right, we'll stay and make the most of that for ourselves and our families, etc.
And what presumes, sorry,
I think what we have got is some great role models, and we need to point them to, and as you say, the Tees Valley, the North East, we've got low business density, so if you want to set up a business, we've got a great entrepreneurial spirit, you survive this long, and so we've kind of like, we've got some tenacity, but also, even if we look in the Tees Valley, say, companies like ourselves, Double 11, we've got lots of digital gaming companies in the Tees Valley who all went to Teesside Uni, they're all mates, they don't compete, but the biggest challenge we've now got with them is they've become global businesses and we haven't got enough office accommodation, which is part of what some of the Numa Group's announcement in terms of development of digital, more digital space. But actually that's pure growth. Those guys have never left the Tees Valley. So again, we need to really role model that with our young people, particularly to say there is no reason. Because I mean, I think I grew up in Teesside, I left and came back, but we don't want that leave come back when you're too old to really be productive. We want to keep the young energy in the region, and then we can all possibly sit back and enjoy our retirement. But the other way around, we're still up here. So again, so I think we have got some brilliant, and in Newcastle, in the North East, great role models to say, homegrown talent, educated here, stayed here, supported by the business community, supported by public sector, supported by government, but you can stay here.
And many businesses that are winning work in London and using our cost of doing business that's much cheaper in the North East to really be competitive in other regions.
And I think that comes back to the transport problem. In the Tees Valley, we've got businesses that are winning a lot of work in the North West and they're turning it down because the train never turns up. So they can't travel at least Manchester reliably. And and that. So when you see that's a constraint, and I think we've got a real example. So I think that's why it takes us all, and we've got to work in a collaborative, interconnected way with young people and old people and everybody in between.
Yeah. But hopefully you're all doing the same stuff in the I'm thinking in a couple of years' time, I want to talk to him about his business.
Yeah, exactly.
And say, what are you doing? What area is it going to be in to follow?
Yeah.
Because their voices, and it's a really simple point, but it takes something to actually raise your hand and say something in an arena like this. To make that sort of point with a bit of confidence, and to say, looking at all of you and saying, I want to come and work here. I want to set up my own business, I want to work with you and work with you and I want to support the council and my authority. That's it.
The other thing I was going to say is there's a kind of change in mindset, kind of going back to kind of skills and development of the next generation. It's been a change of mindset of the kind of traditional way of developing your career as well. I hark back to when I was probably in your position at sixth form and you did your GCSEs, you did your A-levels, and then you went to university. That's completely changed now. Yes, you've still got that traditional way, but you got T-levels. Massive focus on apprenticeships now as well. And again, I can speak from my particular business. We've got a number of solicitor apprentices that 3, 4, 5 years ago wasn't even a role that existed, and gives opportunity to those who perhaps don't want to go to university, or let's call it as it is, perhaps can't afford to go to university, and can get in on the job from 18, develop all the skills over 3, 4, 5 years, and they're qualified solicitors at the end of the day. And that's just one example. The apprenticeship route is being wheeled out across business as a really useful tool for us to get hold of those young people in the region, develop them and retain their talent.
Yes, you said a question about the Crownworks studio. Again, is that something that sort of gave you great hope?
Yes, so I can't remember what I wrote. So. But I think one thing, not wanting to hark back to the transport kind of theme of the day, having done my sentence in London and coming back up, what I did realise is just how the frequency of things like the metro are going to impact things like Cranwork. If you're bringing people in from Newcastle or the surrounding areas, sometimes you can go to the metro and you get there and you're waiting 15, 20 minutes, whereas in centralised areas like London or whatever, it's every 3 minutes. So as a business investing in somewhere like Sunderland, how much are people going to be thinking, well, my staff may be 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late because of all just how long it takes to wait for this?
Do you have aspirations if when Crownworks happens?
Yes, so I work in TV, film and production, and I want to use and work within the industry, but also help build it as we can see it's going to be built.
So,
I mean,
Crownworks fantastic.
Yeah.
Blew us away with its imagination, the scope, the ambition, I think. But again, as we said so many times, it absolutely boils down to the basics. And you've got to have an infrastructure around it that enables people like go in there. Just say, yeah, perfect, everything's aligned.
totally agree, but I wouldn't aspire for us to have a London-style system of transport. I think we've got something here which is about quality of life as well, and less about frequency, but much more about reliability, I think is our biggest issue. I mean, it's, if you know you're going to be able to get on a metro at 12:05, that's great, but if it doesn't turn up and then you wait and the next one doesn't turn up, that's where you have your real problems. We don't have a system that is fit for purpose.
You have a sort of time limit on finding one.
Yeah.
Go to say we want the biggest possible projects, national scale stuff like that. That's going to take a certain amount of time to build, maybe quite a quick time, 2 or 3 years, something like that, maybe. In the meantime, you put some stuff into this.
Yes.
And I think that's another example of, we've got that Crownworks and we've got Hartlepool Production Village, and that's going to be the same ecosystem, the same workforce. Now that's going to be the brilliance of that, but actually we haven't worked out how people are going to get from Hartlepool to Sunderland.
Yeah.
You know, so again, we've got, and that's the piece we need to not forget and make sure we do, which is, and I know in the Tees Valley we've lost really great productions and opportunities because production village isn't on the main line. So we've been part of the transport strategy in the Tees Valley to make sure that we're not losing great opportunities like Tom Cruise wants to come to Hartlepool because he actually wouldn't move very far off Darlington main line. So again, again that great story its success is underpinned by the transport strategy underneath it. So, but again, at least this time it feels like we're across it because we're already going brilliant. We've got that announcement and now having to connect the two things to the northeast.
Really fast line through Peterlee, so.
I still say Uber's the answer. Does Uber work in the Tees Valley? Does it?
Depends whether it's passing through.
You heard it here first.
Biggest Tees Valley has possibly is it? Who's got it in Stockton at the moment that you can order Susan, but a taxi fare that normally costs you £3 and costs you £7 to order to the Uber app, so yeah.
There was a facility where you had those sort of neighbours and the local authorities half of it, and therefore it cost you £1 to summon a vehicle and say, can you get me to the college?
And it's like you said before, you know, if you're having a parcel delivered today by Amazon, you can track it here now, can't you? So you know where it exactly where it is. So I can't understand why we can't track a bus that you can go actually, there's a circular, you know, we just got to work out where the flow is. And then you can see actually it's coming along and it's a free bus, if ideal, but you know.
And I think that's the point, kind of coming back to Crownworks and Hartlepool as well. We've got the metro. The metro will go to Park Lane or Central Station. but we know where Crown Works is going to be down on the river. For me, it's also have that joined up thinking of the first and last mile, which is kind of what we're touching on, or going to Hartlepool Station on the East Coast Main Line, but then being able to get to the studios there. So whether that's flexi buses, whether that's some form of Uber style, but we've got to be starting thinking about that, because, as you say, you'll get off the train at Park Lane and think, right, I've now got a 40-minute walk down to the studios, or actually I've got to turn up and go service, and I can track where the bus is, and it's going to be able to take me down there. You can tell I'm a transport geek, can't you? But you know, the technology and the data is available there to allow for the tracking of buses. We just now need to have that, as I said before, collaborative joined up to make sure that Transport Network and all of these exciting developments kind of fit hand in hand.
There is an answer, and young people will find it, because if you live out in Weardale, where there are no buses after a certain time in the early evening, and you go for a night out in Crook, what you do is you order a pizza at 11 o'clock when the pubs chug out, and then you go to the pizza place at 5 to 11 and say, I've ordered a pizza to go to Rookup. Can I get in your vehicle, Easy Five? And that is real. That is what people do, and that is the answer. Oh, absolutely not.
So yeah, connectivity, there's still work to be done. Just summarising things generally. Clearly, pluses and minuses in the budget, things people take on board, things people think still needs to be done. A feeling, I think, of collaboration that even obviously senators can talk here quite easily, but the feeling that we're doing a bit more together and we feel more a part of a connected group, and that's important. Again and again, it falls down to the people and what they think about what we're all saying and what we're all doing around the 40. It's their view of what we're doing that's going to knit together this region for another generation. You know, the 5, 6, 7 years we're able to plan ahead, but 10, 20, 40 years. Well, I enjoyed that. That was good. That kicked up a fair old pace.
Mike.
I think you can, of course.
I just have one question. My name is John, and I'm speaking as a Durham resident. But there's been so much talk about transport. I could not resist the opportunity to ask the panel whether the highly contentious imposition of parking charges along the Durham coastline are perhaps an opportunity for some huge corporate goodwill to maybe sponsor some of these car parks to free residents from what is effectively a health tax.
A health tax. Is that for the panel? Is that for me, John? I wonder.
No pressure, Elizabeth.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that there are no free car parks. There is no such thing as a free car park. They attract charges in terms of rates and in terms of maintenance and in terms of winter maintenance. So they aren't free. And I think Durham has never made a profit out of car parking and will not be making a profit out of car parking. That's not how it works. All the money gets reinvested into their system. And we would only impose charges where you've got a significant amount of or lack of availability, so less than 25% at peak times, so that it creates a change in behaviour. So it's not about a health tax, and actually we can't afford to run car parks if we don't charge for them. So the other option, which I'm sure is much more unpalatable, is that those car parks get sold off and then into the private sector, and then will become chargeable at whatever rate is tolerated by the market.
It's sort of something we've got to live with.
Nobody likes it. I don't like it. I don't like paying for car parking, but I think it's the reality of life.
And what about the corporate sponsorship side of it? Companies come and say, can we have those 50 spaces? And
that'd be great. Yeah, my door is always open.
Assuming that the charges are going ahead, and again, I don't think it's possible, but I do think that it would be a wonderful opportunity for corporates possibly to step in and say we realise the value of what goes on in these special places to the local community. And perhaps there is an opportunity for some sort of sponsorship which would free residents and visitors from having to pay to park. Particularly given the many comments that we've heard today about the fact that the transport system is largely broken. Some of the communication that has come out from Durham County Council is encouraging people to go to more sustainable transport sources, which we all know don't exist. So it's just a thought, food for thought, and I couldn't resist the opportunity of being a sea and swimmer and Durham residents, and the fact that there's been so much talk about transport.
Thank you. No, good.
Thank you.
We like the fact that it's offered us an opportunity. This suggested an opportunity. Absolutely fine. Right, cool. There's starting on my food. Just a couple of thank yous. I should mention recognition PR from Darlington, who have set up all the live streaming today. We're very grateful for their help and their cooperation. Thank you so much to our panel and to Matt. We can ask you to show your appreciation for all that you do.